My dear students, today we are starting with conflict perspective. We have already discussed functionalist perspective, the first perspective, which assumes that society is like a machine. It is a social structure. It has different parts. Each part has a specific function to perform, and society remains in a state of social equilibrium. And every part contributes toward that equilibrium, and that contribution is called function. And we also discussed that society has certain needs. These needs are called functional prerequisites. So the emphasis of functionalist perspective is on fitness and cooperation amongst different parts. So wherever functionalist perspective would analyze a situation or an institution, social institution, I mean, like family, religion, politics. So functionalism would be interested in understanding the functions of that institution. For example, if we discuss functionalism on family, so functionalist perspective on family would discuss family in terms of what are the functions of family. What does it mean? What are the consequences of family? Functions basically are positive consequences. There can be negative consequences as well. So those consequences which are not good for society, which are not good for social equilibrium, they are called dysfunctions. Dysfunctions. So we have functions which are positive consequences, and we have dysfunctions which are negative consequences. But still, the emphasis of functionalist perspective is on functions. They do not emphasize much the dysfunctions, but still, I mean, the concept of dysfunctions is there. The important sociologists related to functionalist perspective are Emile Delphine, T. Parsons, and R.K. Merton. Basically, it was Merton who gave the idea of dysfunctions. So these are three most important functionalist sociologists, right? So we will apply functionalist perspective on different social institutions later on, and we'll see how they analyze. But before that, we need to understand theoretically the other perspectives, then we will apply them together. Second perspective which we are studying today is conflict perspective. While the emphasis of functionalism is on cooperation and fitness and harmony and equilibrium, the emphasis of conflict perspective is on conflict and competition. The first perspective, functionalism, assumes that society is achieved by the contribution of all the parts. They assume that society is composed of different groups which are in conflict with one another. They say, conflict perspective, the sociologists of conflict perspective say that even if we assume that there is order, there is a structure, but the real question is that who has created that structure and who is taking benefits from that structure. This is the real question which must be asked by a sociologist according to conflict perspective. So the key question is basically who has created that structure, right? Who has created the social structure, and secondly, who benefits? The idea of exploitation is central to the conflict perspective. So how different groups are exploiting the other groups, the idea of power, how power is manipulated to exploit the other people. Political exploitation, economic exploitation, social exploitation, psychological exploitation, different kinds of exploitations are assumed to be part of the structure, and therefore conflict theorists, conflict sociologists would think that this is the task of a sociologist to dig the social structures, and to see and to let other people see how this group is exploiting that group. So, who is exploiting whom? Who is exploiting whom? These are the major questions which a sociologist must ask according to conflict perspective. Who has created social structure? Who benefits? Who is exploiting whom? So, uh, therefore, they say that uh, actually there are many conflict perspectives. It's not just one conflict perspective. Feminism is also basically a branch of conflict perspective, but we will discuss here only the mainstream conflict perspective, that is given by Karl Marx. So Marxism is the major, you can say, perspective within conflict perspective. So Marx, Karl Marx, who was a German philosopher, but who lived most part of his life in England, and his friend uh, Frederick Engels, they together wrote many books. The most important work is The Capital, in German, Das Kapital. By the way, this is the time to learn new languages when we are not meeting and there is much time available. So learn German language, Deutsch. Das Capital. Das is basically the definite noun in German. There are three definite nouns in German: das, da, and the. So this is neutral. There is masculine, there is feminine as well. So this is the capital. In English, we will translate it the capital. The capital, right? So Karl Marx was basically a philosopher, an economist, a sociologist, a journalist, a poet, a political activist, a political scientist. That's why he studied in philosophy, in political science, in sociology, and his impact is on literature. So you can say that the 20th century was the century of Karl Marx, because every intellectual, every person who was thinking, he had to take some position vis-a-vis Karl Marx. He can reject Karl Marx, but he cannot ignore Karl Marx. Allama Iqbal has written poetry on Karl Marx. Nees पैगंबर wa lekin dar bagal darud kitab. He's not like a prophet, but he looks like a prophet, as if he's a prophet. He has got the book, the Capital. It is in perhaps 3 or 4 volumes, and then the small booklet of Frederick Engels, the Communist Manifesto. Uh, Engels and Karl Marx, Communist Manifesto. This is also important. So Karl Marx says that basically society is composed of two conflicted classes, two classes which are in conflict, and those classes are the class which owns the property, the class which owns the means of production. Let me write it. Means of production. It simply means all those resources through which we can produce things, more capital, right? So factory and land and machine and organization and labor, all these are means of production, factors of production of wealth, right? The whole economics, my dear students, is basically, it revolves around two questions. Economics. Question number one: how to produce wealth, production of wealth. And secondly, distribution of wealth. Production of wealth and distribution of wealth. These are the two central questions of economics. Marx is saying here that the class which has monopoly over means of production and a class which does not own any means of production except its own labor. So there are two classes. So the class which owns the means of production, they have land and they have factories and they have everything, capital. This is called capitalist class, or technically say that this is bourgeois. Bourgoise. This is not bourgeoisie. The word is bourgeois. This is French word. It literally means middle class. But technically here in Marxism, it means the class which owns the means of production. You can say the capitalist class. And the second class is proletariat. Proletariat simply means working class. The peasants are included, you can say, but mainly industrial workers. Industrial workers are proletariat and bourgeois. So the conflict between these two classes is the characteristic of modern capitalist society. Marx offers a very profound critique on capitalist society of 19th century. Marx was born in 1818, belonged to 19th century. He died in 1880s, perhaps in 1882. So his work is basically a critique of 19th century European capitalism. And he was hopeful that the conflict between these two classes would ultimately lead to a revolution in society, and proletariat would take control of the whole society, and they would create a new kind of society. And this is not just happening now. Karl Marx says that this has happened before and before and before. He traces the whole human history in terms of these revolutions when one class, one social class takes over the other class. So basically, Marx is producing a philosophy of history, and he says that history moves only when, through conflict of classes, a new class takes over and new economic relationships are created. And this is now, we will go beyond the scope of this introductory class, but he has given a whole philosophy. He has taken insights from Hegel, the Hegel's idea of clash, dialectics, dialectics, dialectics. Dialectics simply means the clash of opposites. So Hegel says that ideas clash. Hegel is basically idealist. Idealist simply here means that idealism is refers to in philosophy. It's not that idealism that we say that he is very idealist. It's not that idealism. Idealism simply means here that the ultimate reality is an idea. The ultimate reality is not matter. The ultimate reality is consciousness. The ultimate reality is spirit, right? So the spirit. So the ideas are clashing with one another, and they generate in this clash new ideas. And then again there is a clash. Thesis clashes with antithesis, and it gives to synthesis, which is a new idea. So this is dialectics, but this dialectics is going on in the world of ideas according to Hegel. Karl Marx took the idea of dialectics but rejected the idea of idealism. He replaced idealism with materialism. So Karl Marx's philosophy is dialectical materialism. Dialectical materialism. It means that material forces are clashing with one another, and by material forces he means economic classes, social classes based on ownership of means of production. So this is how different classes clash with one another, and then they produce a new social system, and this is how history moves. So this is the whole philosophy. So the main idea of conflict perspective is that a sociologist should see that how exploitation is going on in society. This is the major idea which is interesting here, that they need to think that economic classes particularly, they how they exploit, and how the lower class is being exploited by the upper classes. So this is the major. There are other conflict sociologists as well. Another important sociologist of 20th century is C. Wright Mills. C. Wright Mills. Please check this sociologist on internet or in some book, C. Wright Mills, and he has written a very important book. There are two important books on sociology. One is The Power Elite. The Power Elite. This book, The Power Elite, is basically an analysis of power dynamics in United States in 20th century. How he says that it's not simply Congress or not simply President of United States who is making decisions. there is a structure of power underlying the apparent structure of power. And the task of a political sociologist is to dig and see where the real power lies. So, The Power Elite is an interesting book, and it is relevant to study any society. And it's available in PDF, so I would recommend this reading. Second is The Sociological Imagination. This is also a very important book. Any of you who is thinking of majoring in sociology, he or she should read this book, The Sociological Imagination. Thank you very much.